What are you expecting from Meta? They went from the year of efficiency to investing deeply in AI and data centers and also AI talent, in all fairness. What are you expecting when it comes to CapEx from them? And how does the street react if they make a significant increase in their forecast?
Yeah, well, I don't think you go and spend $15 billion on a quasi-acqui-hire and set up a super intelligence group to then go and cut back on CapEx. So I think, there is still an arms race out there. Everyone's competing here, and so no one's going to be pulling back anytime soon. And so I expect, to see, positive comments around that capital spending going out from here. And, that's coming from, use cases ramping up. I mean, the other thing we saw from Alphabet last week was, the number of tokens they're processing, 980 trillion. And then that's up from 480 trillion just a couple of months ago. So that use case and that CapEx is increasingly going into our usage of this technology and not just training up a bunch of models, which I think is giving them more confidence to lean into this opportunity.
So you're saying it's giving them more confidence to lean into it, but is there a point where it's too much? We've had some guests on where, some CEOs, according to the Yale CEO caucus, believe that there's too much hype around AI and there may actually be overinvestment. Then we see some companies like an ASML saying they're not really sure they're going to grow in the coming year. So we're seeing some mixed signals when it comes to this infrastructure story. Is there a number that's just too much? Is there too much growth when it comes to that CapEx spending for either one of these companies?
I think at some point, I'm not sure we're there yet, but I think a couple of things are important when you think about that. We've heard tax reform mentioned earlier in this program. That's going to be a significant benefit to the free cash flow of these companies, which again probably gives them a bit more confidence to be able to, the fact that they can expense up to 100% of CapEx in a year and R&D spending domestically, it gives them more free cash flow that they can feed into this capital spending. And also just the competition. You're hearing about Anthropic doing a raise. OpenAI did a raise last quarter. XAI is doing a raise. All of these raises are probably going to go into building more AI infrastructure or renting it off a hyperscaler. Again, that's going to give them more confidence to spend. So, these sort of trends aren't linear. At some point, there will be an end to the party, but it seems a bit early in this technology's innovation to be thinking about that.
All right, Lauren's looking at the movers, and if you show me NVIDIA, yeah, it's moving. New high?
No, not today. The new high, I believe, is right near 180. Morgan Stanley did raise their price target, though. They're going from 170 to 200. Strong demand for the new Blackwell chips, and they expect the supply bottlenecks to improve in the second half of the year.
Well, we've focused on the chips as a result of the big numbers, like the one that Kovac and Julie Borson just showed us, because what they're spending. The SMH hit a record high. 9th positive week in the last 10. NVIDIA's pacing for its 10th straight weekly gain. Bryn, that's probably the second place we're going to look after the numbers come out tonight. After you see what Microsoft and Meta deliver, you're going to take a peek and you're going to say, okay, what's NVIDIA doing? Because 80 billion plus of what these companies are spending or thereabout is funneling to that company.
Yeah, and then you have, also with NVIDIA, you have China is now arguably a positive now for NVIDIA. And then these companies, I've said this quarter after quarter, I think for the last year and a half, these companies are giving you a sneak peek in what NVIDIA is going to do because they still have pole positions. And so I think that NVIDIA, I think Broadcom, there's a few other ones that are really in that great spot of growth. And so I just think that they are spending money on these chips, on these GPUs. But I do think with Meta, with Microsoft, with all of this spend, I think we will look back in a few years and they won't have actually spent all of this money. Because what I continue to hear locally as well as, when you read about it, is there's an electricity shortage. And so I'm going to question in a year or so if we're going to be able to stand up these data centers at this rate because of the issues around electricity and power around that.
And they're trying to end their reliance on Silicon Valley during a major AI conference in Shanghai this week. Companies there highlighted the products that they built without any U.S. technology, Mike. I find this to be so intriguing that they are kind of highlighting their independence from us. And if that's the case, it just brings me back to this meeting that President Trump had with NVIDIA chipmaker Jensen Huang and how we're now sending them China, the H20 chips. Should we be rethinking that decision if Shanghai's got it covered?
So those chips that they're getting will be 2 and 3 generations behind the AI companies will be getting here. And so they're easier for NVIDIA to produce, and it's why hold back our companies over here from making money, and that's kind of what moved forward with that. But it's just like they say, well, here's a conference, and we're going to showcase all this technology without any American tech. I don't believe you, right? But that being said, they're not going to catch us with AI, but they do have one huge advantage, and that's their energy grid.
Yeah.
Right? And so everybody's electricity prices are going up across the country because we have, tying it back to earlier, we have invested in so much ESG. The neglect to our traditional fossil fuel energy grid has put us at a massive disadvantage. Even the great red state of Florida, where I live, there's all these sorts of nonsense green agendas. Texas, like the reddest of red states, they had blackouts a few years ago because of all the green initiatives in their energy grid. In China, they don't have that. They'll just fire up a coal-fired plant tomorrow.
That's right. They're cooking with coal, too. It's incredible.
And so they're not going to catch us, but it's essential that the U.S. get its act together with its energy grid. And then I have no problem sending them our old stuff. So it's like, we're on an iPhone 15 or 16 now. They can have my iPhone 12, if that correlation makes sense.
So what else is at an all-time high today? Well, NVIDIA, of course, is the best performing Magnificent Seven stock of the day. NVIDIA, about $500 billion now, ahead of market cap, ahead of Microsoft. In other words, the biggest company and getting bigger.
Now, do these two huge stocks change the narrative, perhaps for the whole market? I guess the argument would be not only is this bullish for the likes of NVIDIA and the other AI equipment makers that the very biggest names out there are continuing to spend, but hey, the bar is raised for Amazon, for, well, somewhat Apple, but for a lot of other companies, no?
No, I mean, really spectacular on both fronts. It's really hard to point out anything negative in either of them. I think the earnings season in aggregate has been very strong. This is kind of just continuing that theme. Tech is certainly, I think these companies are unique. They are operating on a different plane than nearly any other company in America right now. It raises the bar certainly for Amazon tomorrow. Apple's a little bit different, a little bit different dynamics, but, really it's very strong across the board. Mega cap tech continues to fire on all cylinders. Other sectors and industries that aren't as large and don't have as many secular drivers are more of a mixed bag.
Just to put that into perspective, is that what we saw was, first of all, two companies accelerating their growth based on AI on a 3 standard deviation move relative to what they've accelerated their growth over in the past few quarters. So we're seeing an increased impact here. And then second is on this CapEx. Meta guided their CapEx. We haven't gotten Microsoft's yet, but they guided it to 48% growth next year. The street was at 11%. And so I think this is essentially what the message that Microsoft and Meta are sending to every company is there is gold in those hills, that you can invest in AI and increase your earnings. And I think that that is going to speak volume to get other companies to continue to start to move towards this. And so this is a big moment based on these two companies' reports. And I think to answer your question is I do think we're going to see a re-rating. I think we are still in the early innings of what's going to be a crazy bull market. It's going to end in a bubble burst, but I think the next few years are going to be great.
Gene, thanks. Gene Munster of Deepwater. Extraordinary move in Meta, 12% higher on a $2 trillion stock. Are you thinking about?
Well, I'm thinking about what he said about the CapEx thing, which that growth is huge. But what's happened with companies that expense very quickly, which you're now going to be able to do, is your free cash flow, because it's a non-cash charge. That's going to look a lot better. I am surprised, though, at the how big that other leg up is.
Yeah.
Coming in earnings, the street was worried that Mark Zuckerberg might be paying too much for talent. But when we looked at the numbers, we had to laugh. Like a great baseball team owner, Zuckerberg can overpay all he wants. Meta's winning the championships with these numbers, which were sharply better than even the most bullish of Meta's Amen chorus. Plus, they gave us an amazingly strong forecast, much higher than expected revenue, with their capital expenditure budget coming in at the low end. Of course, what does that have to do with the Fed, right? Meanwhile, Microsoft also reported a monster top and bottom line beat with tremendous strength in their Azure cloud infrastructure business. Many people think that's the most important division, where growth accelerated from 35% to 39% in just 3 months. This is a huge business. That's incredible. Their AI business is on fire, too. The scale of the sales and earnings beat here were pretty staggering. I am shocked at the strength we're seeing here. Microsoft, like Meta, is spending fortunes on hardware and software, and it just keeps paying off. As always, we have to wait until the Microsoft earnings call, which is ongoing, to get the company's forecast and thus the full story. But the numbers that are reported for this quarter, they are incredible. But these two core Magnificent Seven companies do not relate much to anything that Jay Powell's talking about. As I call them, they are nation states of their own. Aside from these heavy hitters and companies like NVIDIA that help them accomplish these astonishing results, you can't get the rest of the market moving up without some sign that the Fed will backstop us. Maybe we shouldn't even care. The bottom line, I think this market fell apart today because the Fed seems reluctant to give us that rate cut backstop. I didn't get the sense of the so-called inevitability of rate cuts that I felt from the last two Fed meetings. Judging by the action, not many others did either. But you know what? After the close, maybe Microsoft and Meta set us all right.
All right, I hope you're all doing great today. NVIDIA reached a new all-time high today and finished the day about 2.1% higher. The real action is happening in after hours, though. So let's cover Meta and Microsoft CapEx really quick. And then I'll talk about three things after that, including a correction of something that I've said in recent videos. I'll talk about NVIDIA versus AMD, and I'll finish the video by giving my thoughts on NVIDIA's long-term future. Let's start with Meta's CapEx guidance. I thought going into this earnings report that Meta was going to drastically increase their CapEx guidance, given recent announcements that they plan to spend hundreds of billions of dollars on compute build-out in coming years as they construct multiple multi-gigawatt data centers. Keep in mind that a single 1 gigawatt data center leads to tens of billions of dollars of revenue for NVIDIA. And Meta wants to build multiple multi-gigawatt data centers. To my surprise, Meta did not raise the upper end of the range for their 2025 CapEx guidance, but they did lift the lower end of the range by $2 billion, which is positive. And I think what really pleased NVIDIA investors was that Meta said, quote, "We currently expect another year of similarly significant capital expenditure dollar growth in 2026. That is the big positive news for NVIDIA from Meta's earnings. They're speaking about strong 2026 CapEx. For about a year now, many market participants have been skeptical about whether 2026 would be another growth year for NVIDIA. And now they are finally starting to realize that 2026 should be another growth year as NVIDIA's largest clients are speaking about strong 2026 CapEx numbers. As for Microsoft, they spent $24.2 billion on CapEx in the fiscal fourth quarter, which is more than what was expected. As mentioned in recent videos, I was expecting Microsoft to have spent more on CapEx in the quarter than what investors were expecting, and thankfully that turned out to be the case. And the big news about Microsoft CapEx is that they guided next quarter CapEx to be more than $30 billion, saying there is more AI demand than what they can supply. Microsoft expects to be capacity constrained for the first half of the fiscal year. This is fantastic news for NVIDIA. Once again, Microsoft leadership said on this earnings call that they expect total CapEx to moderate in fiscal 2026 as they shift their spending towards short-lived assets inside the data center, such as CPUs and GPUs. That's good news for NVIDIA, but it also means that we could see a moderation in total CapEx in the future. When asked about the ROI on CapEx spending, Microsoft leadership said that they currently have a backlog of $368 billion that they have to deliver, highlighting that there is already massive ROI on the investments. CFO Amy Hood said that back in January, she thought Microsoft would not be supply constrained at this point in the year. And now here we are, and Microsoft is still capacity constrained because there is such strong AI demand. Meta and Microsoft both provided great news for NVIDIA investors today. Meta is expecting significant 2026 CapEx, and Microsoft spent more on CapEx in fiscal Q4 than what was expected, while also substantially raising their next quarter CapEx guidance. Now I want to make a correction to something I've said in recent videos because I made a mistake, and it's important that we have a clear understanding moving forward. So please hear me well right now. Recently, I've been saying that a single Kyber rack, the NVL 576 system, will be able to hold 576 Rubin GPUs, 8 times as many as the current Blackwell systems. That is not entirely correct because NVIDIA changed the way they count GPUs. Let me play this short snippet from GTC where Jensen explained the situation, and then I'll add more context after that.
Now, one of the things that I made a mistake on, and so I just need you to make this pivot. We're going to do this one time. Blackwell is really 2 GPUs in one Blackwell chip. We call that one chip a GPU, and that was wrong. And the reason for that is it screws up all the NVLink nomenclature and things like that. So going forward, without going back to Blackwell to fix it, going forward, when I say NVLink 144, it just means that it's connected to 144 GPUs. And each one of those GPUs is a GPU die, and it could be assembled in some package. How it's assembled could change from time to time, okay? And so each GPU die is a GPU, each NVLink is connected to the GPU. And so Vera Rubin NVLink 144. And then this now sets the stage For the second half of the year, the following year, we call Rubin Ultra. Okay, so Vera Rubin Ultra. I know. 4 GPUs in one package.
All right, so while the upcoming Rubin Ultra system will be called the NVL576, there are actually 576 GPU dies, and there are 4 dies within a single GPU package. And so technically there will only be 144 GPUs in that system, with each GPU containing 4 dies, and NVIDIA will count each of the 576 dies as an individual GPU. A single Blackwell GPU contains 2 GPU dies. And so within a single Blackwell NVL72 system, there are 144 GPU dies. In the upcoming Rubin Ultra NVL576 system, there will be 576 GPU dies, which is 4 times as many as the current Blackwell systems. From now on, when NVIDIA says GPU, they are really referring to the number of GPU dies, not the total number of GPU packages, as there can be multiple dies within a single package. I apologize for the confusion, and thank you to Alex Bravo for bringing this to my attention. I will try to be more accurate when speaking about this topic in the future. Since we're talking about Vera Rubin, it's worth noting that the Vera CPU will be NVIDIA's first custom CPU, containing 88 NVIDIA Olympus cores custom designed to work in tandem with NVIDIA GPUs. And we have a clear data center product roadmap stretching into 2028. Jensen believes that the world's computing capex will reach $1 trillion annually by 2030. With this in mind, I think NVIDIA will be worth substantially more in future years than it is today. I'll briefly mention AMD because there have been some analysts recently suggesting that AMD's MI350 is competitive with NVIDIA's Blackwell GPU. I am bullish on AMD as well, so please do not mistake me as being bearish on the company. That being said, it's important to remember that NVIDIA develops full-stack systems, innovating at every component of the system, both hardware and software. And so if another company develops a faster GPU than NVIDIA's, it really doesn't concern NVIDIA, as that is just one component of the system, and NVIDIA sells the entire system. That being said, AMD's upcoming MI400 system is very exciting and is expected in 2026. That system is supposed to contain 72 GPUs in an attempt to rival NVIDIA's full rack system. But even then, a key challenge for AMD will be NVIDIA's moat around software. NVIDIA's software offering in CUDA is a massive advantage for NVIDIA, and it does not get enough attention. If developers build on CUDA, they want to remain on CUDA, and that is massively beneficial to NVIDIA, keeping clients within their ecosystem. Right now, the world is in an AI race with companies rushing to build the best models and the best apps as quickly as possible. And many companies do not want to risk losing months of time for their developers to learn how to use a different software platform. This is another reason why CUDA is such a massive benefit to NVIDIA maintaining its moat. At the same time, I think there is plenty of room for NVIDIA, AMD, and other companies to all succeed in this market as AI demand is so strong. I continue to be bullish on the long-term future of NVIDIA, and I think this company still has a lot of runway ahead of it. Today's CapEx commentary from both Meta and Microsoft is further indication that we are still in the early days of AI, and I think with AI agents just starting to be introduced to the general public, we are likely to see another massive surge in compute demand that extends well into 2026. For those who don't know, AI agents are essentially AI models that will complete tasks on your behalf. Some practical examples would be telling it to order your favorite coffee for you, or to book you a flight, or to find a hotel room in a certain location during a certain time and book it for you. In other words, instead of just giving you an answer to your queries, the AI models will now actually do things on your behalf. AI agents are just now starting to be rolled out to the general public. I think this will result in a massive surge in demand that will likely extend well into 2026. I expect 2026 to be yet another growth year for NVIDIA, and many market participants are finally starting to realize this. Looking ahead, I really like the setup for NVIDIA in the second half of this year, and I'm expecting NVIDIA to report strong Q3 and Q4 numbers given the successful production ramp of Blackwell and the launch of Blackwell Ultra. Blackwell Ultra has launched, and production should really start to ramp in August and September. Then next year in 2026, we have NVIDIA's next generation Vera Rubin. NVIDIA has massive sovereign AI deals for large-scale data centers around the world, and I think we're likely to get news about more sovereign AI deals in the future, especially after the White House's AI action plan that was revealed last week. Under the plan, the U.S. government will actively work to export full-stack AI technology packages around the world to the United States allies. This, of course, includes NVIDIA's products. The AI Summit in Washington last week featured the CEOs of many important companies. Those who spoke at the summit included Jensen Huang, Lisa Su, and the CEO of MP Materials. I recently made a video about MP Materials, and I seriously encourage you to watch it in its entirety. This company's product will be central to the oncoming wave of physical AI, and I think there's a lot of upside ahead in future years. I'm viewing MP Materials as a long-term investment to be held for at least the next 5 to 10 years. I encourage you to watch that video in its entirety so you know what's going on. Going back to NVIDIA, I continue to be bullish on NVIDIA long term, and I think this company will be worth much more in future years than it is today. At least that's my view of the situation. Remember to stay calm in this market. Remember to maintain a long-term perspective, and do not make any hasty or irrational decisions. With all of that being said, I hope you all have a great rest of the day, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts about NVIDIA in the comments below. Please leave a like on this video so more people will see it. And while you're down there, please consider subscribing. It's free, and you can always change your mind. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.